You're listening to Off the Court, a show dedicated to making you the best version of yourself as an athlete and as a person. I'm Coach Jack, CEO and owner of Close the Gate Hoops. If you want to take your life and game to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's get it. We are live. What up, gatekeepers? Back at you with another Off the Court episode. Today, Coach Connor came up with a great topic that he wanted to talk about, and it's experiences from us, lessons to you. And this is going to be a huge takeaway episode to all of our students at CTG right now, basically to help them not make the same type of mistakes and mental adversity that we went through going all the way up until high school. And to start off the episode, we're going to have Coach Connor talk about what experiences and the biggest takeaways it was for him growing up and the things he wished he could have told his younger self to become a better person.
I'm going to start out with kind of my experiences with like my life and the adversity I tried to overcome and what I faced throughout my high school career. So I would say 8th grade summer, I guess all through my life, baseball, favorite sport, and pitched all the time, pitch. And 8th grade summer said, Dad, my elbow kind of started hurting, and didn't think anything of it at the time, and a couple weeks went on, still hurt. Went in and something called OCD lesion. Now, obviously, I can't explain what that is, but I had to have elbow surgery, and after elbow surgery, I was done pitching for life. So
I didn't even know you were done pitching for life.
Yeah, I mean,
you just couldn't throw as hard, or what?
Just the repetition for pitching, obviously. I could play any other position in the field or anything. Obviously, I'm a lefty, so I'm kind of limited for those who know baseball. But yeah, I mean, pitching is repetition, so I was done with that because of my elbow surgery.
Was it inevitable with that happening, or was it like you kind of overtrained?
It was kind of, I would say, not overtraining, but just like over pitching in games and practices, I guess.
So that's basically overtraining.
Yeah,
I mean, we need to do an episode on overtraining because this is something like even overworking. Like adults do this as well. But that's why we always talk about working smart and hard, because overtraining, it has counterproductive effects. It's kind of like even myself, I fall in this all the time. I overtrain myself, and then as a result, I'm actually worse the day before than I was when I was trying to get better. And that can actually happen as a result, like sleep as well. And I've been experimenting with sleep for like this last 6 months, and I've been talking about it on the podcast as well. But there's a fine line between positive effects from training, which is like peak amount that you should be doing, and then to the point where you go over it, and then it's going negatively. Is there something you wanted to add on that, Aaron?
So Connor, that was obviously a huge change for you. Like you were not used to never being able to pitch. So how did you kind of go through that mentally, and how did you like come back from that, I guess?
Well, obviously through my whole life, baseball was definitely like, that was my favorite thing ever to do in my life. But mainly why baseball was my favorite thing ever was because of pitching, because throughout youth and middle school, I was pretty good at pitching. But once I had this elbow surgery, I didn't fade away from baseball, but it definitely became less of a favorite sport for me. And it almost became...
Sorry. Is baseball still your favorite sport?
So that's what I was just about to talk about. So now it's almost like, obviously this is when I was in high school, but when it's baseball season, that's my favorite sport. But when it's basketball season, then I'm focused on basketball, and that's my favorite sport.
That's really, really good. For the younger listeners that might be going through something similar, like kind of life-altering news in terms of like your favorite thing was pitching, you're told you can never pitch ever again throughout your life. You obviously learned from that, right? But what were the type of thoughts you were having in that moment? So like they told you you'll never be able to pitch again. What were kind of the thoughts? Because if I heard that news when I was at your age, I'd be thinking things like, life's unfair, my life sucks, things of that nature. Do you remember specific thoughts that you're having like during that time?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I remember I went from the local like clinic hospital to get my elbow checked up, see if they could do surgery on it here. They said they couldn't do it here. They sent me to Milwaukee. They couldn't do it there. Then they sent me to this guy who does the shoulder and elbow surgeries for the Chicago White Sox in Chicago. And he said, I could do it here, but you'd rather probably want to do it from this guy in Waukesha, which is a lot closer to Janesville, obviously. So,
So you got, you were pretty famous, right? Getting surgery from the White Sox guy?
no, I mean, it's just, that's what they recommended me to. So this surgeon, when he did my report before my surgery, he said, if I do the surgery on your elbow, you're not going to be able to pitch ever again. And at that time, I kind of whispered to my dad and I said, can you tell him to leave? And I just remember it was 8th grade summer, but I just remember breaking down and just bawling my eyes out for like 10 minutes because that was my passion. Like that was my favorite thing to do ever.
So when that was taken away from you, you being able to pitch, did it kind of change your mindset about other sports as well? Like you shouldn't take things like this for granted, because a lot of kids growing up, they play sports and they just think that that's always going to be there and they're always able to just be able to play sports. And I kind of experienced this when I was done with high school. I didn't play any sports after high school, so when I was in high school, I always kind of just thought it was going to be there, but it's not. Did that make you kind of not take these things for granted like that?
Well, kind of at the time, obviously when he told me I couldn't pitch ever again, I was not thinking, okay, baseball's not now going to be my least favorite sport or something like that. But it kind of just fades away because at the time, yeah, pitching was my favorite thing to do ever. That's why baseball was my favorite sport. But like appreciating baseball, obviously back then, I didn't really think anything of it and how I just lost something I loved forever. But now that I look back on it, it was, yeah, like I kind of took it for granted.
That's good. That actually sparked an idea in my brain. Present reflection is a huge difference from future reflection, because we're sitting in our seats right now. It's easy to look back and be grateful for all these things that happened for you. But in reality, you took them for granted because you didn't have reflection in the present moment. And that's something I'm trying to work on right now is reflect on my day every night and kind of just not trying to get caught up in all these little things, because throughout my day, my brain's always flying all over the place. People that text me know I have to text them like 3 times in a row about something I just asked because I lose my train of thought so much. But the reflection really keeps us centered in sort of in airplane mode, to the point where we're not always super high and super low with all these things that in reality don't matter in the big picture. And reflecting in the present moment and being grateful for what you already have is such a huge piece to play. And like you were saying, Cotter, yes, you still obviously haven't matured. You're in 8th grade. But you didn't realize it in the moment you were reflecting on it, like, dang, I really should have appreciated my ability to enjoy pitching. You know what I mean? And that's something all of us can work better on, is present reflection, instead of reflecting on it later in the future, like when we talk about things like this. So I thought that was good.
So just a question for, I guess, both of you. We can start with Coach Aaron. Is there any experiences or adversity you had to overcome in high school or anything throughout your career?
Yeah. So when you say the word adversity, I guess my junior year of high school comes to mind. I had a really fun sophomore year where I kind of figured out what I was capable of. But then my junior year, I think I was a 3-sport athlete throughout high school. So all 3 sports, I kind of had something going on. In the cross country season, I got mono for my sectional meet. And I was really, really hoping to go to state that year, and I got mono at the sectional meet, and I had ran my slowest time that I had run all year. So I was pretty upset about that. but it just kind of gave me motivation that I needed to get myself there my senior year. So I think it just kind of made me work that much harder. Basketball season, my junior year, as I've talked about before on this podcast, I got in a little trouble. I got suspended a couple games. And again, losing those games, I didn't really realize it in the moment. Like Jack was just talking about with the present reflection. I thought it was just, it's 6 games that I'm missing out on. But after I finished my last game, my senior year, I looked back and I would have done anything to get just those 6 games back. So, that there's that.
And I think one of those games was one of the Parker Crosstown rival games, right?
Yeah, that was the first game I was out on. I actually got suspended the day of that game. So I remember just it was the worst day of my I hate that day because I remember going home. I actually got suspended from school that day, so I had to go home. I kind of sat at home. I talked to my dad for a little bit about it, and then I remember I wasn't able to actually even go to that game, so I listened to it in my room on the radio, and it was just torture. But yeah, so I had that, and it's not that was my own fault, and I tried to take responsibility for that, and it definitely changed my mindset and my priorities throughout the rest of my career in high school. But after
looking back on it, Aaron, do you think that there was a reason that you were suspended?
Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, that goes along with that. The common theme that you like to talk about, Jack, is that everything has a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And I think if I hadn't gotten in trouble there, it might have been worse. I'm glad I think I look back at it and I'm actually happy that it happened, because I don't know how much it could have progressed or things like that. And I'm glad it happened at the time I did, rather than my senior year or anything like that.
But in the moment, were you thinking that?
Absolutely not. In the moment, I was just frustrated. I thought I was an idiot. I thought this was like, I at the moment, I wasn't really mad that what was I just going to say? I had something. At the moment, I wasn't mad that I was doing what I was doing. I was mad that I got caught doing what I was doing. But now looking back at it, it makes so much more sense that I'm just glad that I actually got in trouble and learned a lesson there. And then lastly, my senior year at track, this one wasn't as bad, but I hadn't done as well at the state meet as I thought I would. And again, that just kind of inspired me to try to work harder to do better next year, I guess.
So I guess this question can go to both Coach Aaron and Coach Connor, because they've both been talking about their experiences and lessons to give to all you gatekeepers that are listening. But if you could, and this doesn't have to be just transitioning into high school, this could be lessons that you've learned from anything throughout sports. But if you could have told your younger self about the things you know now, what would you tell them to help them get through that adversity?
Well, I mean, knowing what I know now, that the permanence is not reality that you think. Like you're when you're younger, you think it's permanent. You think everything's just going to be around forever and nothing will change. But knowing what I know now, it's everything comes to an end at some point, and so you kind of got to take advantage of those moments. So using that adversity to your advantage, to your inspiration or things like that can actually help you out a lot. And again, everything happens for a reason. So if you're going through some kind of adversity like that, there's always a way to put it in a positive light, I guess.
Seriously, if you believe that statement, you can literally turn the worst thing in the world into something positive, because it can affect your future actions. Like, I remember in the present moment being your friend when you got caught, and I was probably like, this is going to be good for him. I remember saying that to my dad, actually. Mm-hmm. Just because if you didn't get caught, you don't know what else you would have done.
Right.
You know what I mean? But when you truly believe that everything happens for a reason, like no matter what happens to you, it's always going to turn out better.
And it's true, because that truly did completely change my priorities. It changed up what I wanted to do, my goals, what I was doing to try to reach those goals, things like that. And it really helped me have kind of a successful end to my sports career.
That was good. That was awesome.
Mine's kind of just short and quick, but it's almost like trial and error. But it's just pretty much like what your mom or dad would say to you. If you make mistakes, you learn for them. Obviously, Aaron's not the only person in the world who made a mistake. But if you make a mistake like that, or anything in general, you can learn from it in a positive way.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I kind of got into running and what I experienced through that. So basketball was always just the constant in my life. I played other sports like when I was younger, but the only one that really stuck around was basketball. Until I got to middle school, I started running, and I wasn't like a huge fan of running or anything, but I was pretty good at it. So I realized that I felt almost obligated to try to keep doing that. I always loved basketball before running, so I always made basketball a priority, that's one thing that I am really happy I did. I never kind of took away from basketball just to be a runner, because I was a better runner than a basketball player throughout my life. But there was a lot of experiences I had through running. I grew up with all of my friends just being basketball players, and none of them were. I think I had one friend that I played basketball with that ran with me, and that was Blake. Some of you might know that, but other than that, it was different. You know, I was outside of the norm for other basketball players that I was friends with, and it kind of like a lot of my friends would like make fun of me for running, and it wasn't something I usually ever let get to me. I didn't really mind it, but it was a lot of my friends, they would make fun of me for running, or they would tell me running's not a real sport, or things like that. And it's something that a lot of kids, if they heard that, they would kind of let that get to them. But I knew my goals, and I knew that it mattered to me, so it didn't really matter what anyone else said, I guess. But that's just something I wanted to talk about, because a lot of if you're thinking about stepping outside of your comfort zone or the norm, and you're worried about people saying things about it, I mean, it doesn't matter if you truly like it. And for a while, I didn't really actually enjoy running until about my junior year. I think I found a little passion, and I found out what I was capable of, and I found a drive for running. And I really wish I could have seen that earlier, because another thing I've talked about a lot here is how I got second place at the state meet, and I was 0.17 seconds away. And when I had finished the race, after I finished the race, the only thing I could think of was, what could I have done throughout the years prior, where I had been working my butt off to run 0.17 seconds faster. So it just kind of goes along with, you know, if you're thinking about skipping a rep, or you're thinking about something, just things like that. If you wanna eat a piece of cake or something like that, the consequences or the room for error can be much smaller than you might anticipate. And that's not to say you shouldn't like enjoy life, or you shouldn't just try to have fun throughout it, but you do want to think about the small things that you might be doing, which kind of gets into another episode that we might do in the future. But yeah.
Do you think there's anything specific you can think of that, like something that came to mind when you thought about that 0.17 seconds? Or
Well, yeah, the first thing that came to mind was any kind of, you know, activities like drinking alcohol or things like that, you know. And I thought maybe, you know, if I hadn't chose to do that, I might have been a state champion. But it's all about making sacrifices, and it's all about making your priorities, I guess. And I promise you that I did. That those kinds of things should not be your priority in high school. There's plenty of time to do all that stuff after.
And maybe the reason that you got 0.17 seconds away is so you can talk about it.
Everything happens for a reason.
There you go. There's always another way.
Yep. Yeah. You got to reframe it. Running was something kind of a unique situation that I could talk about in my case. But Jack, what are some struggles that you kind of went through that you were able to overcome, or that helped you learn some things?
So growing up, and Aaron can relate to this too, I was always the smallest guy in the court. People would look at my dad. He was 5'8", and people would always say I was never going to be anything because I'm always going to be short. And well, now I'm standing at 6 feet tall. I'm still one of the smaller kids on the court, okay, but I'm not too small to where it's a huge disadvantage. But at a young age, I learned that if I want to accomplish anything, I'm going to have to outwork anybody. And that's people that are listening to this that have never talked to me before. That's kind of what I'm known for, is being a hard worker. But over time, and my dad would always tell me this, that it's going to pay off one way or another. And you don't know what it's going to be in the present moment, but it'll always pay off in the long run. And I've said this multiple times. The reason that I was tiny and the reason I wasn't gifted athletically, I was literally given nothing in terms of sports. Like, if I didn't work hard and I tried to, like, me and Aaron are different in this way. Aaron is very gifted athletically and instinctively as well. He can kind of just come up to the court and play, and he'll ball up on all of you.
Athletic freak.
And again, I'm sure there's a reason that Aaron was gifted that way in the first place. But I'm kind of glad I was given a disadvantage in that way, because it taught me and has led me to things like this podcast. If I didn't have, it's almost ingrained in my personality and identity now that I have to work super, super hard at everything. And I wouldn't have that if I wasn't given athletic ability, if I wasn't super tiny growing up. And that's why I'm super, super happy that happened. But in terms of my high school career with sports, it was up and down. Freshman year, I remember being one of the better players in the grade, just because, well, it was me, you, Sevy was pretty big, Lynch was pretty big. I still haven't grown into my body, but I remember being pretty skilled at that age. But everyone was still pretty young except for a couple kids, and they were obviously the alpha dogs because they're in their man body. But I remember going into sophomore year, I was still pretty unathletic and tiny, and then everyone else was kind of like getting past puberty, and that's where I kind of fell behind a little bit. And I remember JV year, I started all my life through basketball. Like I said, I was super tiny, but I was very skilled, mainly because my dad's a basketball coach, and all I did was play basketball. But my JV year was like the first time I didn't start, and like, I don't even remember. And I remember that being super, super devastating. And there wasn't really anything I could do about it, because I remember at the time, like, putting in tons of work. But then I realized that putting in tons of work actually wasn't that much at all. I thought I was super cool because I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and things of that nature. But then I remember JV year, and you'll learn later on, I took it to the extreme, to the point where all I did was work out. And I've said this before on the podcast, I've learned the key to life is balance. You can't be doing too much of one thing and too little of another thing. I definitely overtrained in high school. We're going to have to make another podcast about overtraining, and I still do it to this day. And it's so hard for me to not overtrain, because everything I've ever done is I've had to work for. But the best advice that I would give to myself growing up in high school is to work smart and hard, because I only worked hard. I had a great GPA in high school, and I'll say this all the time, but I was dumb. I had a great GPA because I would work super hard at homework. I would do all the homework. I would do great on the test, but I would forget everything I just learned because I didn't care about the knowledge. And now, being out of high school and trying to run Close the Gate, I'm trying to be the best person that I can be. So I'm trying to be knowledgeable in every aspect of life, because that's what I'm trying to install in these kids. But if I would have learned that sooner, I don't even know where I'd be at with basketball, because I would be way, way better, just in terms of how to train athletically and how to train shooting-wise more efficiently. Because I would go into the gym, and I just listened to a podcast earlier today about this, spending versus investing. When I was growing up in high school, trying to outwork everyone, I was spending time in the gym. I was not investing time in the gym. I would spend 4 hours a day in the gym, or 4 hours in the beginning of the day, 4 hours later in the day, and thinking, wow, I'm going to be so much better than everyone else because I spent that time in the gym. Okay, it's not about spending time. It's what you do with the time. Okay, how are you investing that time? What could you have done with the other 4 hours when you were doing lackadaisical shooting to become a better version of yourself? So that would be my biggest takeaway from high school, would be to crave knowledge and always wanting to keep learning. And not just thinking outworking everybody is the solution. Because yes, that is going to get you very far, but you have to combine the knowledge and the work ethic, in my opinion. So that was probably my biggest takeaway looking back on it now. But I just want to let all you people know that probably my biggest failure to this day was composure. And that's something my dad said all the way up until the last time I talked to him. I said, if there's one thing you could tell me before obviously you die, and he told me composure. And that still sticks with me to this day, because composure is basically the ability to not fly high and low. And this is something I struggled with in high school. Like I remember my senior year was a roller coaster. The first game I scored 30 points a game. I was a leading scorer in conference by like 5 points a game the first 5 games or something. And then it was a roller coaster. And then I fell off for a few games. I got injured. I rolled my ankle. My body language was the biggest problem with the team. And that's probably another thing. I was way too self-centered in high school. Because how I viewed it is I was outworking everybody. So I was, in my brain, I was thinking nobody else cared. I was thinking I was the only one that cared, so why should I care about other people? When in reality, that's not the truth. Everyone cared. Everyone just had a different way of processing and going through their own things throughout their life. Because basketball was a huge priority to me, it doesn't mean it's the number one priority for everyone else. But not winning should be the number one goal in any sport. It doesn't matter. Individual goals are always last priority, in my opinion, knowing this now. And even when we play pickup, all I care about is winning. I literally don't care about anything else. Like the other night, I told myself when you wanted Lynch and Sevy to come, and Lynch and Sevy haven't played basketball in 3 months, so I took that as a challenge. I was like, I want them to be on my team, and I want to, beat you and who'd we play with? Carson and DeMarcus. But all I cared about was winning. I didn't care if I scored a single point that game. That's a shift in mindset that I've had later on in my life that I wish I had in high school. And like I remember in high school, count my points when I was in the game. I would count and Blake, my buddy Blake, does the same thing he tells me. But I would count my points in high school because that's literally all I cared about, which is a terrible, terrible mindset to have. So that's also something I would have wanted to change earlier on in my life, is the self-center, the way my brain was thinking, and knowing that winning with the team is more important than anything else. And in terms of composure, I got off track there. When I say flying high and low, and I talk about with my students this now too, is if I had a camera just on your body, you should be able to not tell if you made or missed a shot. Because when we make shots, we don't make a single reaction whatsoever. We just run to the next spot or run down the court or we walk to wherever we're going. We don't even make a facial expression or a wince. But most of us, when we miss something, we're programmed to have like a reaction. Like we need to have a reaction. So that's why I'm saying if I had the camera just on someone's body language, you would be able to, should not be able to tell if they made or missed it. But if I did that for basically anyone, I'd be able to tell if they missed it because they'd have some type of reaction. So that was probably my biggest thing in high school, is I was way too up in my head about every single little detail about the game, whether it was a good result or a bad result. And even though they are sometimes good results and bad results, you can't openly express that through your body because that affects things through all assets of your life.
To go back on what you said about having a camera on you at all times, whether you make or miss a shot. Me, Coach Aaron, and Coach Jack, we were playing King of the Court 1v1 a couple of weeks ago, and and Coach Jack goes, "All right, let's challenge ourselves. Whether we make or miss a shot, if you miss a bunny, miss a layup or something like that, miss an easy shot, don't react," or vice versa on the defensive side. So I thought that was a good point he brought up.
It was hard too, because you naturally just that's what your brain thinks. You miss a shot, you flail your arms or something. But the more and more you get used to not reacting, not only will you look better on the court, to not like coaches and fans and things, but you'll actually feel a switch in your mindset. So I guess Jack was talking about winning being the most important thing, which is completely true, right? But again, basketball is not just a single person game, which goes along with what Jack said too. And to be a successful team, something I kind of learned throughout high school. We had some pretty promising teams at the beginning of the year. I always thought we were going to be really good when I was throughout high school. I thought we were going to have a really good team, but we didn't really play to my expectations, and I think other expectations too. But I think a huge reason for that is our team never really set any goals. I can't really ever think of what our goal was, how far we wanted to go in the tournament, or what we wanted to do. And, with that, I don't think anyone had any kind of like motivation to reach any goal. We obviously wanted to win. That's the main goal, but there was nothing we said we wanted to do. And I think a lot of times we kind of lost sight of what we were trying to do, and we didn't really hold each other accountable. And I kind of wish that we all kind of we might have had the same kind of goals subconsciously, but we never really talked about it, or we never really had the same drive to reach these goals or anything.
And I think we talked about this in one of the previous episodes. We tried to be too realistic with ourselves. Like when all of us were scared to say, let's win state, because we're like, we can't do that. But like you said, you shoot for the moon and you land amongst the stars. Like you have to do that if you actually want to achieve what you want to achieve.
Yep.
But that's such a good point. We never set goals. Never. And this again goes into our immature selves in high school. It's so hard to describe like the type of mindset that you're in when you're in high school.
Well, that's the thing is, if you're a high school or middle school listening to this, I think this information is so valuable to you guys, because it puts you ahead of people that aren't listening to this, and it really we're literally talking about things we could have done different in high school, and we're trying to teach you to how to do things differently than we did. And this is a big thing, is trying to hold people that are going to be on your team accountable, right? Start young, start working out with each other young, start playing together young, things like that. Set goals for your senior year when you're young, things like that. And it can really, really just progress beautifully for you guys if you do that.
And don't put limits on yourself. Limits is literally, that's probably the biggest thing in high school, is we try to limit ourselves to what can actually happen to us and what can happen to us. And we see all these famous people on social media and all this stuff, and we think that can't be us, but it totally can be you. That honestly, limits is something every high schooler puts and younger kid puts on themselves, because they think they can't be that person.
That was that basketball year. What year was that, guys? When you were a junior? When I was a junior, you guys were seniors. 2019. I think we would all agree, a lot of us, like mostly you guys, our basketball team was very skilled, and I think we would all agree we didn't put every piece of the puzzle together that year.
And I think a lot of it, and I'm not saying that I was definitely one of the most self-centered on the team. I wasn't going to admit it in the present moment, but I'm admitting it now. But we had a lot of other kids that I would say that were self-centered as well. And that type of, I've talked about this previously, is that true family. Who is true family? And they're ones that can share emotions. None of us, when we were in high school, in our immature, self-centered brains, none of us wanted to share emotions. We would rather see someone fail for us to gain an advantage over someone. And that's probably the biggest difference between now and in high school, is that type of shared emotion and being happy for people when they succeed and being sorry for people when they fail. That
right there is a true successful culture, when you guys can be happy for each other's successes and you can fail with each other and learn from it. But so I remember when I was younger, my dad asked me, he was like, what is your end goal with basketball? And I was probably in like middle school or elementary school when he asked me this, and he said, what is your end goal? And I said I wanted to play overseas somewhere. And it's like, I didn't say that because I was passionate about traveling when I was that age. I said that because I didn't think I could make it to the NBA or things like that. And that's just an example, like you limit yourself and you don't think you can do these things, but why? Like, why can't you? And it's, looking back on it, I laugh at it because it's like, my younger self, why would I just want to go play overseas? Like, if I'm going to go play overseas, if I can make it that far, there's no way I can't make it to the NBA. you know?
Self-doubt is the number one dream killer. And self-doubt, all the people you see, like Curry, LeBron, none of them had self-doubt. Absolutely zero. They knew where they were going and they got there.
When we were talking about high school and how Jack said it was like more of a family, right? You said that. To talk about when it was my junior year and Jack and Aaron's senior year. My junior year, I don't think we were as obviously we were really good friends outside of basketball, but inside of basketball, it was like Jack said, there was a lot of guys that were self-centered, myself included. I didn't play that much that year, and I thought I should, and that right there I think is selfish in terms of what team is, and it was more of me, not we. But like the following year, my senior year, yes, I started, but that year, everyone on the bench, everyone in that team, we were more of a compact family, and my senior year basketball was 10 times more fun than my junior year. But from my junior year, my senior year friends like Jack, Aaron, Lynch, Sevy, they're some of my best friends, but we were less of a family in terms of basketball, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. I would definitely agree with that as well. Now, gatekeepers listening, I know this episode was all over the place, okay? But there was actually a ton of gems in here, and we're really just trying to help you get to where you want to be faster, because we basically just told everything we would have told our younger selves on how to achieve what we want to achieve. And to recap kind of what everyone talked about, myself included, the biggest lessons and experiences I've learned from growing up through sports is you can't control how big you are, how athletic you are, what talents you have growing up, but you can control how the decisions you make after that. So working hard, but then also working smart with working hard, and the self-centeredness of where you're coming from. Are you caring just about yourself, or are you caring about the collective of the team? Because all in all, winning in a sport is the number one priority, and individual priorities are below anything team related. And then the final one, that's the biggest for me, that I'm still working on to this day, is composure. Not openly expressing your body language, no matter if things are going good or bad, to other people, because it's a huge disadvantage for you to be showing the other team what's going through your head. You should have a poker face. They should have no idea what you're thinking. Aaron, what I got out of yours, which was really good, is that everything happens for a reason. Even though you don't know it in the moment, but nothing's permanent. And in the moment, you think it's gonna be like that for forever. But looking back outside of it now, you're glad that it happened. Mm-hmm. And the 0.17 seconds thing, I think that's really, really good. What could you have done differently to get that extra edge on the other player? You listening to this now, you're in that moment to change that before you actually get there. So I thought that was awesome. And then the no limits thing that you said, that's crazy. Now that I think about it, that's the number one thing people do as a kid is limits.
Yeah, because no one like when I was growing up, I mean, I started to progress through basketball. I was like, there's no possible way I can make it to the NBA because I'm limited, because I'm not going to be 6'5". I'm not going to be able to windmill dunk. It's just, you limit yourself more than you think, and it's even subconsciously you don't even notice that you're doing it, I guess.
And Connor, your biggest takeaway from me was not taking what you're doing now for granted, and being told that you'll never be able to pitch again is such a gut-wrenching thing to be told. But now, knowing it now, you're telling the gatekeepers to be grateful for that, what you're doing right now, and to reflect on it in the present moment, not just the future moment when it's kind of too late. So just be grateful and reflect on what you're able to do now. That really keeps us in check. I think this episode was good. We got a ton of gems. We probably can skip the speed round today for the gatekeepers listening. Just keep it nice and sweet. That sound good? Awesome. Thanks for joining again today, coaches. I'm Coach Jack. We out, baby. Peace.